Hello, welcome to News Central Now, coming to you live from our studio in Nigeria. I am Benga Aborowa, and here are the top stories at this hour. 21 African migrants die in boat mishap off the coast of Tunisia. 65,000 people on the run in Nigeria's northeastern border town of Damasak after attack by armed groups. And Namibia to begin phase 2 of its COVID-19 vaccination campaign next week. We'll bring you all the details shortly. The news begins in North Africa, where at least 21 migrants from Africa died when their boat sank off Tunisia as they tried to cross the Mediterranean to the Italian island of Lampedusa. Director of Tunisia's Civil Protection Service, Mouad Mechri, said on Friday that the boat sank during a trip that started late on Thursday from the town of Sfax. Mechri said so far the Coast Guard is still searching for survivors. The latest incident comes after 39 migrants last month died off the coast of Sfax in a similar accident. We move to West Africa, where the United Nations Refugee Agency says about 65,000 people in Nigeria's northeastern border town of Damasak are on the run after an attack by armed groups on Wednesday. The UNHCR's Babar Balok told a briefing in Geneva, Switzerland on Friday that the 65,000 comprises about 80% of the town's population. He said the number includes the local community and internally displaced people. 8 people were killed and at least a dozen injured during the April 14th incident, which is the third in just 7 days. Meanwhile, the Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament, C.D. Mohamed Tunis, has tasked parliamentarians to prevail on their states to ensure issues stopping women participation is a thing of the past. Mohamed Tunis made the call at the closing session of the Parliament's delocalized meeting in Monrovia, the capital of Liberia, where she assured female parliamentarians that the Parliament will continue to place issues affecting women on its front burner. It says there is a need for member states to give women within the sub-region the full support and encouragement and express confidence issues of gender inequality will soon be a thing of the past.
ECOWAS Parliament, working with all stakeholders, will endeavour to ensure that women issues are addressed to the fullest. We are aware that it requires our genuine commitment and actions. Hence, the onus is on us to prevail on our states to take bold steps at tackling those issues that deprived women the opportunity to excel and be heard. As we conclude this meeting, we are highly encouraged that women of our region will persevere and prosper even after the COVID-19 pandemic is over. We are optimistic that we will prevail over gender inequalities, fears, and vices that hinder the peace, happiness, and prosperity of our states.
Still in the region, Nigerians and the media in particular have been accused of demarketing their country. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, made the accusation on Thursday while reacting to Twitter's decision to cite its continental headquarters in Ghana, despite Nigeria having 17 million more users of the microblogging website. The minister says Twitter's decision to choose Ghana over Nigeria should serve as a lesson for Nigerians to be patriotic in managing the image of the country. Now, joining us this evening for more on this is Larry Arogundade, is the director of the International Press Center. A very warm evening to you, Mr. Arogundade.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Now, Germany on Friday also decided to establish a German West African Center for Global Health and Pandemic Prevention in Ghana. How complicit do you think the Nigerian media has been or not in demarketing the country, according to Minister Lai Mohammed?
Well, I think it's unacceptable for the minister to blame the Nigerian media for the relocation of Twitter headquarters to Ghana and the location of the German center on on the seas in the same country. I believe that they have good reasons to do so, and I'm sure that it might be due to the fact that they consider the Ghanaian environment much more conducive, much more friendly to the endeavors, much more transparent, possibly much more accountable. And I think this is what the Minister of Information should be looking at, and not scapegoating, the media. I think it's unfair to accuse the Nigerian media of not being patriotic. If anything, I would think that the media in Nigeria has been over-patriotic, in reporting, our issues. It is not only the bad sides that happen here that we report, and in any case, do we then pretend that we do not have all the problems we have around us, all the conflicts, the killings, the harassment, terrorism? The media will be shirking its responsibility if it refuses to report all these things, because we have a constitutional responsibility to monitor governance and hold government accountable. Unfortunately, in instances where we try to ask questions from the government as to why these things are happening, what they are doing about it, they are not always willing, to provide that information. In the past couple of months, the media has celebrated successes of Nigerians all over the places. Nigerians of origin, Nigerians abroad who are making, who are making medical feats. Nigerians abroad who are excelling in different areas. We do report all this. So for me, it's an allegation that is totally unacceptable, and I dare say it's uncalled for.
Now, Mr. Arugundade, the minister also blamed the NSAS movement and perhaps the media's coverage of the incidents leading up to and after the October 20 incident. What is the global best practice in this situation? And does patriotism equate to not reporting bad news?
I do not think so. The global best practice is that when you have a conflict, the media in reporting such conflict must be professional. We must be ethical. We must be truthful. We must, as much as possible, be accurate, not to suppress a major development. So there was nothing wrong with the way the Nigerian media reported the NSAS protest. The turning point was the October 20 incident at the Lekki toll gate. And again, the media tried to be on top of the situation. But if you follow the records very well, the shooting that happened, the military initially even denied it, whereas the media was there, physically present, and they were reporting that this thing actually happened. But the government denied, the military denied. Later on, they changed their story, and then they changed their story all over again. In terms of the number of the dead, as a result of the Lekki toll gate shootings, we might say that we should have erred on the side of caution in terms of throwing up numbers, especially where we were not sure. But then the responsibility to provide accurate information is that of government or government agencies. You see what happened elsewhere, because we are talking about global best practices. Accurate information will normally come from the states. Look at what happened shortly before Donald Trump ended his tenure as American president, when the Capitol was stormed. That same day, that evening, and then the following day, the police were giving accurate information as to the number of injured, the number of those that were killed, the alleged perpetrators, what they did, what they damaged, and all those kind of things. And within a short period of time, those who were responsible for that violence, had been identified, and then they were facing prosecution. That is what we expect our government to do. And that is what the Nigerian media is asking our government to do. But when we cite those examples, they will say, oh, why are you always citing the example of America? It took them so many years for them to develop from such a global best practices.
Now, Mr. Arugundade is director of the International Press Center in Nigeria. Nigeria is currently in its 22nd year of uninterrupted democratic experience, and we've come a long way from the military decrees, to gag the press, and we're enjoying more freedoms. What's your honest assessment of the Nigeria's government's relationship with the media over the years, especially in this new democratic dispensation?
It has been more of a kind of cat and mouse game. On the one hand, we will say that because we're under a civil dispensation, we enjoy that freedom to report issues of development, issues of governance, and the rest of them. But we also discover that we have a number of obstacles, and what we are trying to come to terms with is that it will seem as if, even though we say we are under democracy, the institutions of governance, some of them are not yet totally demilitarized. So to that extent, the police will continue to see journalists as their enemies. The army also, don't forget that because of the reporting of the Boko Haram incident, for example, media houses have been invaded. There was a time that Daily Trust was shut down and their editors were being searched for simply because they were trying to report to the best of their ability what was happening in all these places. So every year we discover that more and more journalists are being harassed, more and more journalists are being arrested and detained. And this is not supposed to happen in a democratic setup. In fact, it's so bad that if you looked at the last report of the Committee to Protect Journalists, Nigeria is now being categorized among countries where it is very, very dangerous to practice as a journalist. And for us, this is very, very bad. My organization, we do document attacks on journalists. During the COVID-19 lockdown last year, so many journalists were attacked, even though they were supposed to be recognized as frontline workers. So I would say that we still have a lot of challenges, and there has to be increasing dialogue. And I feel that for government, they need to build greater capacity for their officials on understanding the role of the media in a democracy.
Finally, I'm happy you mentioned rankings. If you look at the press freedom indices, a lot of African governments are not doing very well there, and they don't have the best relationship with the media. And bearing in mind that we do have our own peculiarities, there are new problems that have emerged, like the Boko Haram insurgency that you mentioned earlier. A lot of government officials will say, we can't release classified information. We don't want them to, we want to keep these things closed. How best can African governments improve their rankings, press freedom rankings, and their relationship with the media in general?
You see, the problem comes from the area of transparency and accountability. Governments that are not open, that are not transparent, always tend to clamp down on the media. So where you have high incidence of corruption, you would always have problem with the media. Where you have high incidence of manipulation of the electoral process, you would have problems with the media. So the government first and foremost, governments in Africa first and foremost have to put their houses in order for them to actually provide good governance, provide the enabling environment to enable societies to develop and reduce conflicts, because across Africa we have a huge population of unemployed youths. In your report earlier on, you mentioned the fact that some African would-be migrants in Europe had their boats capsized, and they're still searching for survivors. Probably there will be no survivors. So that is the kind of environment that we have, that they need to put their house in order. Now, for the media, I feel that we also need to hold our governments much more accountable. Unfortunately, that comes with a lot of risk. And so I feel that media organizations, media institutions in Africa also need to begin to talk about how best can we ensure the safety of journalists that practice on the continent. So
it's a win-win situation for both the government and journalists. Thank you very much, Mr. Larry. Thank you very much, Mr. Larry Arugundade, Director of the International Press Center in Nigeria. Do appreciate your insights and contribution on the news this evening.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mr. Larry Arugundade is the Director of the International Press Center. Now, moving to north of Africa, the United Nations mission in Mali, MINUSMA, had bid farewell to 4 Chadian peacekeepers who were killed on the 2nd of April in an attack against the mission's Aguelhok camp in the Kidal region. 19 others were killed during the attack. The ceremony took place at the MINUSMA headquarters in Bamako, the capital city of Mali, in the presence of UN Deputy Special Representative Joanne Adamson and other dignitaries. The bodies of the fallen soldiers were repatriated to Chad following the ceremony. The mission supports implementation of a 2015 peace agreement signed by the authorities and two coalitions of armed groups and is considered the most dangerous UN operation to serve in. We move to East Africa, where the United States says it will impose visa restrictions on individuals accused of subverting democracy in Uganda following the January 14th elections and the campaign period before the polls. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on Friday said the move is to ensure the consequences for interfering in democratic processes. Campaigns leading up to the elections registered scenes of violence as police and opposition supporters clashed in what observers said was one of the most keenly contested elections in Ugandan history. Uganda's incumbent president, Yoweri Museveni, won the election with 58.64% of the tallied vote, defeating 10 challengers, including closest rival Robert Changulanyi, popularly known as Bobby Wine. In the Horn of Africa, South Sudan has received more than $95 million from the United States to help the Horn of Africa nation's humanitarian efforts. United States Department of State spokesperson Ned Price said the funding will provide relief to some of the nearly 4 million South Sudanese refugees and internally displaced people in the country. The funds are also expected to be used to support refugees and host communities in Uganda, Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The announcement includes nearly $53 million through the U.S. Agency of International Development and nearly $43 million from the U.S. Department of State. Still in the region, Somali President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo has defended Parliament's resolution to set new election timelines, which led to a cancellation of the September 17, 2020 elections agreement between the federal government and federal member states. The initial agreement was expected to oversee the indirect election process, but Monday this week, more than 140 legislators of the lower house backed the new election model of one person, one vote. The opposition have termed the move as an extension of the mandate of the current leadership as Somalia's external partners, the EU, the United Nations, African Union and the United States and the UK have called for a return to the talks to avert a crisis in the Horn of Africa nation. Joining us for more is News Central's East Africa correspondent, Abdinor Aden. Hello, Abdinor. Good evening to you.
Good evening to you too.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, it would appear the Somali parliament is divided. The Senate is not consenting and agreeing with President Farmajo's term extension. Is this not going to weaken the government further? What's really going on?
Well, before I dive into your question, is that President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo today gave an explosive interview in one of the leading Somali television stations where he divulged into details of what led to the impasse in the elections, as well as the failure of the initial September 17, 2020 elections agreement. And well, of course, I might touch on that later on, but to start with your question is that in Somalia, we have the upper house and we have the House of the People, and there have been a lot of different interpretations of the law regarding Article 55, which terms that any legislation must be agreed upon by members of both the upper house and the lower house. However, they also say that the electoral-related matters is an issue to be handled by the lower house or the House of the People, which recently made a resolution to cancel the September 17, 2020 indirect elections to take the country through the one person, one vote, which also requires 2 years of preparations in order to ensure that the Somali people have a right to elect their leaders and transition from the indirect elections.
Now, it appeared that the actions of the president and the lower house might prove to be a major setback to steps taken to stabilize Somalia. You talked about one person vote mechanism. Do you think with the current situation of security in Somalia that if elections were to hold today, it would not be an open invitation for Al-Shabaab to carry on the Dastardly Act? Is Somalia actually ready to have that one person one vote?
As a matter of fact, Somalia is indeed yearning to get to one person, one vote, because for the third time now, the country since 1960, it has, never had another transition to, people deciding who is going to be their leader. But now there are challenges of insecurity with the Al-Shabaab, even just recently engaging in some fight, even though the Somali National Army managed to defeat them in some of the regions of the lower Shabelle region. However, the fact of the matter is, it is something that requires a long time to coordinate, and it requires goodwill from the political leadership, because the key challenge is not the public, but it's convincing the leadership stakeholders to take the country through one person, one vote. Because as we very well know that we have 5 federal member states, and we also have the Mogadishu municipality, which also contribute to their own leadership and influence over the people. And this might require their goodwill in order to make this dream a realization. And in as much as there are challenges with insecurity, the National Independent Election Commission, which was the initial coordinator for the one person, one vote, still holds that if given enough support, logistical support, security support, and even goodwill from the leadership, it will enable, even if it's not the entire 16 million population inside the country, they can try as much as possible to undertake the process in areas where there is reliable stability.
Now, Somalia is a country that is highly dependent on donors from international development partners in the international community. And the EU, the United States, have come out specifically in strong terms to condemn the term extension by President Farmajo. I don't know if he spoke about this this evening in the interview granted to Somali State Television, but do you anticipate a situation where there will be sanctions, or how do we get out of this impasse?
As of now, there is no clear statement or specific names or specific actions that have been mentioned, but there have only been calls, to try and push or even, lead the leadership or encourage them to go back to the talks, which is something that the current president, His Excellency Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo, has said he isn't turning back from the new decision made by Parliament. But what the opposition are really calling for, and people who are opposing, President Farmajo, is that they really want this sanction to be realized in order to coerce the leadership to indeed reply or answer the calls to go back to the tables, to go back to the discussion and negotiation tables, and fulfill the September 17, 2020 elections agreement. However, one thing that President Farmajo has been reiterating, and it has attracted a lot of support from the public, is that he says we have bilateral and multilateral relations based on mutual respect and trust, and elections is a matter that is limited to the country, and you must respect our sovereignty. Something, an exciting observation, or even a case which has elicited some reactions, is the fact that initially, when the September 17 negotiations were taking place, we will have updates from more than 20 partners. However, after Parliament passed its resolution, there has been some abstinence from various partners, and we've only had a total of 11, composed of nations and organizations calling the president and the leadership back to the talks. So this shows that not all of them are actually indeed, supporting or even opposing the nation's recent actions to go towards one person, one vote.
Thank you very much, Abdul Aden. At the end of the day, it's the Somali people that would decide their fate and what direction they want their country to go. Do appreciate talking to you this evening. We appreciate your insights on the subject.
Thank you so much.
Abdul Aden, News Central's East Africa correspondent there. You're watching News Central now. When the news returns, we'll bring you updates on the coronavirus across Africa, as Namibia is set to begin phase 2 of its vaccination campaign next week. Details of this and more when we return. Now to a continuous coverage of the coronavirus pandemic across Africa. A second phase of Namibia's COVID-19 vaccination campaign will begin on Monday, the 19th of April. Health Minister Kalumbi Shangula said on Friday that the rollout follows the receipt of 24,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccines brought by the government through the Covax facility. Shangula said the consignment is the first of more that will be delivered in the coming months, not only from Covax facility, but potentially from other manufacturers and suppliers. He called on all eligible Namibians to make themselves available for vaccination so that they effectively curb the spread of the virus and return Namibia to normalcy. Staying in southern Africa, 5 people have died of coronavirus in Zimbabwe today, while there are 39 new cases and only 14 recoveries, resulting in the number of active cases going up to 875. The figures are being driven by new cases in Matabeleland South, which had 17 new cases today. It dominated the rise last week following an outbreak of the pandemic at the Sacred Heart High School near Esingodini, where 117 people tested positive. Cases in Harare continue to drop and are now at 398, while Bulawayo goes up and down and is now at 118. Cases in Matabeleland South rose to 271. Zimbabwe has already procured 1.2 million doses of the vaccine and received more than 400,000 doses as donations. COVID-19 sample tested at a laboratory in Kenya shows that the South African variant is present in the nation, said a top health official. Though infection numbers are dropping thanks to Seychelles' world's leading vaccination rate, the Public Health Commissioner, Jude Gideon, told a press conference that 30 samples taken from June last year to March were sent for testing at the Kemri lab in Kenya a few weeks ago, and that 14 of those samples were evaluated. Gideon says out of the 14, 4 samples collected in February had the South African variant, while the other 10 had the original strain of the virus. This means that there are no other variants seen amongst the samples tested. Seychelles has recorded 4,765 cases of COVID-19, amongst which 389, including 6 healthcare workers, are still active. This is News Central now. Still ahead on the news, Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai has been sentenced to 12 months in prison for his role in the 2019 pro-democracy demonstrations. We'll bring you more on this when we return. The World Health Organization has warned that COVID-19 cases and deaths around the world are increasing at a worrying rate. Director General of the UN agency, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, gave the warning today while speaking to reporters in Geneva, Switzerland. The WHO boss said cases and deaths are approaching the highest rate of infection seen so far during the pandemic. He noted that some countries that had previously avoided widespread transmission are now seeing steep increases in infections. WHO's Dr. Maria van Kerkhove and WHO's chief scientist, Dr. Suma Swaminathan, also briefed journalists on a new variant of the virus first detected and reported by India.
Globally, the number of new cases per week has nearly doubled over the past 2 months. This is approaching the highest rate of infection that we have seen so far during the pandemic. Some countries that had previously avoided widespread transmission are now seeing steep increases in infections.
This virus variant, it's a variant of interest, the B1617 lineage. This was first detected and reported by India, having 2 mutations, the E484Q and the L452R. Those are specific mutations within the genome. This was reported by scientists out of India. They actually presented to us at our Virus Evolution Working Group on Monday, giving us some information about the studies that are underway, and working in collaboration across the country, but also with scientists around the world. It was first seen in 2 states at the end of 2020, and there is an increasing proportion of cases of this B617 that have increased since the end of last year.
But at this point, we have to be really very careful when we discuss the idea of the vaccine passport and what exactly do we mean when we talk about a vaccine passport. If it's a record, and what we are recommending is that all individuals who get vaccines have a record, and this can be a digital record. And we have produced the technical standards for what this record looks like, a smart vaccination card or a digital card, move from paper to digital. That's good for everyone. It's good for countries and systems, immunization programs, and it's also good for individuals who don't have to carry a paper around with them. But that's very different from making it mandatory for someone to have a certificate in order to travel. That's where the problems really start coming up, and we have to think very carefully about it.
Hong Kong's pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai has been sentenced to 12 months in prison after being found guilty of unauthorized assembly. The verdict comes as the mainland is increasingly cracking down on Hong Kong's rights and freedoms. Mr. Lai was one of several activists in court on Friday who were earlier found guilty of charges relating to large pro-democracy demonstrations in 2019. The 73-year-old founder of Apple Daily is a fierce critic of Beijing. He was one of 10 activists sentenced on Friday for participating in a demonstration on the 18th of August 2019. Another 3 received sentences in relation to a separate protest on the 31st of August. They include 82-year-old veteran campaigner Martin Lee and lawyer 73-year-old Margaret Ng, whose sentences were suspended. And up next is business news. Business, the Central Bank of Nigeria has added sugar and wheat to the list of materials, items and commodities that are on its foreign exchange or FX restriction list. The decision, like the 2015 initial one, is aimed at increasing local production of those items on the list. While announcing the new FX regime, the central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, also responded to allegations that Nigeria has been printing money to make up for the shortfall in revenue. The accusation was made by the governor of South State, Edo, Godwin Obaseki.
It is very inappropriate for people to just give some coloration to the word printing of money as if it is some foreign word coming from the sky. Okay, so I think it's important for me to put it this way, that in 2015, 2016, the kind of situations we find ourselves now, which is even worse than what we faced in 2015, 2016, we did provide budget support facility for all the states of this country. That loan remains unpaid till now, and we are going to insist on the states paying back those monies going forward, since they are accusing us of giving them loans. That's what they're saying. And so most countries in the world today are confronted by not only health challenges coming from the pandemic of COVID, and also economic crisis and the rest of them. And what I keep saying this, it would be irresponsible for the Central Bank of Nigeria or any central bank or any Fed to stand idle and then refuse to support its government at this time. And what is being done, right, is being done in any climb. And at the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting, I did say, and I gave data about what is being done, even in developed economies, about what needs to be done to shore up their economy and take them out of recession. Nigeria is unfortunately in a very bad situation. I'm not going to pretend about it, in the sense that we are facing problem about productivity output, which is GDP. Luckily, we managed to just come out of it with a hair's breadth, and we are working very hard to see how we can not only have our head above water, but get our waist above water. That is what we are focused on right now. And of course, we are also confronted by issues of inflation and prices and the rest of them. And so for us to begin to see that some people playing some games, trying to come up with hitting overheating this polity, talking about printing of money, I think is very unfortunate and totally inappropriate. And I would like to advise that this should stop. We should all work for the growth of our country and not playing politics. I'm not a politician, and I keep saying so. I'm a banker, and I should be left to do my work.
Nigeria's inflation rate for the month of March 2021 rose to 18.17% from 17.33% recorded just last month. This is according to the Consumer Price Index report released by the Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics. Food inflation, a closely watched index, spiked to 22.95% from 21.79% in February. The rise in the food index was caused by increases in prices of bread and cereals, potatoes, yams and other tubers, meat, vegetables, fish, oils and fats and fruits. The highest increases were recorded in the prices of passenger transport, medical services and miscellaneous services, followed by pharmaceutical products, paramedical services and personal grooming establishments. Now, joining us on the news this evening is financial analyst and CEO of W.H.O Dynamic Solutions, Mukhtar Mohammed. Thank you very much for joining us on the news, Mukhtar.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Now, why is the level of inflation in Nigeria? Why does it seem to be running away from the grasp of the country's economic planners? What's really going on?
Well, the CBN governor, I listened to your interview, really just said it. We definitely are not surprised about what we're seeing in the inflation numbers. But I think the last quarter is taking us by surprise, and the fact that this is the highest inflation, especially in food inflation, that we've had for 15 years. And I think that is the only one that's taking us by surprise in terms of the gap, 22.9%, which is extremely very high for food inflation. Outside of that, we're not surprised about, no economy is surprised about what is happening, because we definitely expected, because we didn't do what we were supposed to do before, so we'll continue to suffer those issues. And one of those things was the untimely closure of our borders in the third quarter of 2019. That has still had that negative impact on us. The COVID-19 pandemic also, you will not forget the hintsmen and the farmer crisis is still there. And again, we've not gotten into the harvest season, so we'll continue to have those food inflation challenges going forward. And not to forget, like you mentioned during your report, the tweet from the CBN also, a ban of some staple products like sugar, and wheat. So that also is one. That's one, and wheat. Those are one thing that we're going to increase inflation by the time we see those numbers coming out sometime next month also, because what CBN is telling them that, look, you cannot access Forex through our own official Forex window, but you can actually get Forex somewhere else. And remember that they can't get it somewhere else, they'll get it high. And so they will get that commodity into the market at a higher price. And like you said, it's a stable product. It's a product that Nigerians need every day. We have no option than buy those products in a high price until Nigeria is able to meet its own demand, because, you know, it will still difficult. Even if you ban it, it will be very difficult for the Nigerian manufacturers to meet the consumption of oil in Nigeria.
Now, Mukhtar, the current 18.7% inflation outlook is more of a cost push than demand pull, and the 17.33% unemployment rate is really high. Is there any viable path to reverse this trend, or is it a reality we'll have to live with? What, if you could advise the policymakers and government, what would you advise they do to buck this trend? Hello, Mukhtar, are you there? Okay, I believe we lost Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed, financial analyst and CEO of W.H.O Dynamic there. You're still watching News Central now. Still ahead in the news, we'll bring you sports, where you will hear about the World Cup secret in South African rugby, and in entertainment, CDQ's response to a raid on its residence by the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency. We'll bring you details of this and more when we return. Do stay with us.
And in sports, we begin with cricket, where Pakistan have completed a 3-1 win on the fourth and the final T20 international series against South Africa in Centurion. The Shahins won by 3 wickets after collapsing from 92 for 1 to 129 for 7 in pursuit of just 145 for victory before finally limping to their target of 149 for 7 with just 1 ball to spare. Opener Mohamed Rizwan was smartly stumped for a second ball duck, but Fakir Zaman and captain Babara Azam added 92 in just 9 overs to put the tourists in complete control of the game before an extraordinary collapse. Now in rugby, Vodacom Bulls have finally announced the signing of Springbok utility back Johan Goshen in one of the worst kept secrets of the year. He will join the ranks as from the 1st of July this year. Now Goshen, who has been playing from Montpellier in France for the past few seasons, will bolster the Bulls' backline options. Now he's seen as a player who can field 10, 12 and 15 for the Currie Cup champions and will add to their depth as they look to enter Europe. Now, 28-year-old Goshen was named the best player in the French top 14 league in the 2015-2016 season, but then he retired shortly afterwards when he didn't see eye to eye with the Racing Metro officials. He represented the Springboks 13 times, scoring 15 points in the process. Now moving over to athletics, World 100-meter champion Christian Coleman has had his 2-year ban for missing 3 drug tests reduced by 6 months following an appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sports. And 25-year-old American will still miss the Tokyo 2020 Olympics starting in July as the ban runs until 14th of November. He can, however, defend his world indoor and outdoor titles next year. The Court of Arbitration for Sports partially upheld the Athletics Integrity Unit's ruling but found his degree of negligence to be lower. Now, Coleman, who won 100-meter gold at the World Championships in Doha in 2019, was first provisionally suspended in June 2020 after missing a 3rd test in December 2019. And moving over to football, Chris Smalling and his family were robbed at gunpoint in the early hours of Friday morning as armed men entered his home just outside Rome and stole watches, jewelry, and, of course, cash. Now, the Roma defender missed his side's Europa League quarter-final tie against Ajax on Thursday as he was recovering from knee discomfort. Now, according to an Italian news agency, 3 men entered the home after removing a grating from the window of the player's bedroom, forced the footballer to open a safe which contained watches and jewelry. Now, Smalling's family members were also present during the robbery, with his wife calling the police at around 5 a.m. And the police are now examining the video surveillance cameras to shed light on what happened. Now, Smalling and Roma have not commented, but former Manchester United teammate Marcus Rashford tweeted his support. Now moving over to the Champions League, fans groups, including those from Manchester United and Arsenal, want reckless plans to restructure the Champions League dropped. In an open letter to European Club Association Chairman and Juventus chief Andrea Agnelli, they say that the proposals are a serious threat to the entire game. And the new format from 2024 would see the tournament go from 32 to 36 teams. Under the name structure, the current group phase would also be scrapped to be replaced by a first phase that would see each team involved play 10 matches. There will also be space for 2 wildcard entries, which will be reserved for clubs with the highest UEFA coefficient. Meetings are taking place between Europe's major clubs and UEFA officials over the proposals. And that's a wrap on Sports Update. I'll hand over to Benga Aborowa for the rest of the news.
Thank you very much, Udoka. In entertainment tonight, CDQ responds to the raid by the Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement Agency on his residence earlier this week. Ria Abdu gives us more on this and more other entertainment stories.
Welcome to Entertainment News. My name is Ria Abdul. Now we begin in Ghana with a rather sensitive story. Now popular internet sensation and actress Ikua Pimpolo has been sentenced to 90 days in prison by the Circuit Court in Accra, Ghana. So if you recall, while she was celebrating her last birthday, she posted a picture of her nude self alongside with her son. Now she was slapped with 3 charges, one of which publication of nude materials with her 7-year-old son. As we all know, in Nigeria, the National Drug and Law Enforcement Agency, NDLA, is a federal agency charged with eliminating the growing, processing, manufacturing, selling, exporting, and trafficking of hard drugs. If we recall, rapper CDQ's home was raided and he was arrested on the 14th of April for possession of some substance known as loud or cannabis. Well, according to NDLA Director Media and Agency Femi Babafemi, the rapper was arrested and granted bail just yesterday. Now, Sadiq Yusuf, also known as CDQ, placed the curse on those behind his recent arrest by the Nigerian Drug and law enforcement. The music star, who hasn't taken his arrest lightly, took to Twitter to deliver a message. Now, this is what he wrote. Whoever is behind all these false accusations, it shall boomerang on them and their family. They cannot spoil the name I built with sweat and blood. Yeah, as he always says. Well, we're happy that he's safe now. Let's enjoy something from CDQ.
Only one CDQ, plenty
Moving on to Nigeria, some amazing news as Nigerian talents have joined over 200 selected filmmakers from across the globe for this year's Berlin Talents. Now, due to COVID-19 travel restrictions, this year's festival will be held virtually from February 28th to March 5th, 2021. The prestigious film summit has over 205 talents from across the globe in attendance. Now, Berlin Talents is an annual summit and networking platform of the Berlin International Film Festival for outstanding creatives from the field of film and drama. Well, that's all we have for you on Entertainment News. Thanks for watching.
And now for a weather outlook of the continent. The weather outlook for the weekend in South Africa forecasts a low chance of isolated thunderstorms at Northwest and Gauteng on Saturday. Clear skies are also expected across the interior on Sunday. Many parts of Kenya also face intense rainfall. Communities are urged to heed flood warnings issued by authorities and move to higher ground. Our weather desk has more. And that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. 21 African migrants have died from a boat mishap off the coast of Tunisia. 65,000 people are set to be on the run in Nigeria's northeastern border town of Damasak after Wednesday's attack by armed groups. And finally, we told you that Namibia will start phase 2 of its COVID-19 vaccination campaign next week. Remember to follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also catch up with our news and programs. Just download the News Central TV mobile app on Play Store and iOS. You can also catch us live on StarTimes, channel 274. Many thanks for watching. I am Benga Aboroa.